What's up, baseball fans? It's Jay Mertz here, and this is my most exciting time of the season. We're talking about the 2018 All-Star Game in Washington, D.C. Very exciting time. Planes are flying through the clouds as we do the national anthem. All the greatest players are aligned. They're all out on the field. Some of the best hitters, some of the best pitchers, the best relievers. We got managers from some of the best teams in the league holding things down, and everyone's with their families, just soaking it in, you know, going down the little red carpets and everything, taking pictures, signing autographs with fans. Very exciting time. Unfortunately, I'm not there in DC right now, but at least I'm here talking about it, and I do have a lot to talk about today. I wanted to take a look at both the AL and the NL rosters, do a little bit of a review, and this is going to be a lot of fun. We got the home run derby tonight as well, so definitely if you're a baseball fan, these 2 days are for you. Of course, the league is taking a break from the season action right now, the division races, the wild card races and everything, all that stuff, but this is an exciting time. Again, I've said that about 3 or 4 times already. That's how jubilant I am at the moment. But again, I'm here today. I wanted to do a review of the AL and the NL rosters and kind of dig a little deeper into not all the numbers, but at least some of the surface stats and see what I come up with. I had a few snubs that I wanted to talk about as well, but I'm going to get into all that. Let's start with the American League. We got Mookie Betts leading off in right field. Jose Altuve is batting second. He's at second base. Third, we got Mike Trout at center field. JD Martinez is cleaning up. Jose Ramirez batting. He's third base. He's batting fifth. Then we got Aaron Judge after him, Manny Machado, Jose Abreu, first base for the Chicago White Sox, and then behind the plate catching is going to be Salvador Perez. So overall, that's a pretty great lineup, and that's also a pretty great alignment. You got Mookie Betts, a great leadoff hitter, Jose Altuve, and a fantastic two-hole hitter. And then you got Mike Trout, who can do some damage at the batting third, middle of the order, and then JD Martinez and Ramirez cleaning up. Martinez and Ramirez cleaning up can do a lot of damage together. Those are two of the best clutch hitters in the game by leaps and bounds right now. You know, before I even get into the National League starting lineup, I just want to say this is probably the greatest American League starting lineup I've ever seen comprised in an All-Star game in decades. We're talking maybe early 2000s, late 90s during the steroid era. Because all those first 6 guys in the lineup, they're all leading the league in WAR. They're all top 11 in WAR. JD Martinez, I think, is 11th. That's mostly because of his defense, and he mostly DHs for the Red Sox, I believe. But again, he's at 29 homers and 80 RBIs. He's been the best hitter in baseball. That's no argument. If we're talking about just at the plate, compared to Mike Trout, Jose Ramirez, all those guys, he's been the best hitter in baseball. But again, Ramirez, Trout, Altuve, Aaron Judge, these guys they're doing everything, and it shows in the leaderboards. These guys are over 5 wins above replacement. Ramirez and Trout are over 6 wins above replacement. That's not even just all-star caliber. That's Hall of Fame status. Like, if you're doing that sort of thing halfway through the season, just imagine where they're going to be at the end of the year. They're projected at this rate to be above 10 wins above replacement. That's like, you look at Randy Johnson's best season, you look at maybe Pedro Martinez's best season. I know those guys are pitchers, but like, I don't know, Barry Bonds, the Ted Williams, that's like historic, never ever gonna see again type numbers right now. That's incredible. And that's 1 through 6 in their starting lineup. Okay, now I do have some caveats with the American League lineup. And firstly, I want to start with first base, because in all honesty, I don't really believe that Jose Abreu deserves to be in DC at all. He hasn't had a good season. He has a .441 slugging percentage. He's batting a little over 250, over 300 on base percentage, and the weighted on base is about 318. That's among the lowest marks for all first basemen in all of baseball, especially including the American League. And you know, compare him to the Justin Smokes and the Matt Olsons of the world. We're talking about even CJ Cron. CJ Cron has come out of nowhere for the Tampa Bay Rays, but again, that's a small market. Not a lot of people really talk about him the same way they'll talk about Jose Abreu, and that's why he won in the voting. It's unfortunate, but again, maybe it's the fact that he's the lone representative for the Chicago White Sox. That's how bad that team has been. But again, first base, I kind of wish it went to someone like a CJ Cron, and that's again, it's not on the fault of the managers or the players that were voting. It's really more of the fans. You guys should have done a little bit better in that regard. Now, in regards to catcher, I like this situation. You know, they have Salvador Perez starting in place of Wilson Ramos, who has probably been the best catcher in all of baseball, especially behind the plate. I mean, at the plate, not behind the plate, but definitely at the plate. It's going to be interesting to see how Ramos responds to being in DC again. Remember, he was an all-star previously with the Nationals a couple seasons back, so it'll be interesting to see what kind of warm welcome he gets over there. But again, Salvador Perez is still a great defensive catcher behind the plate. He's been an awful hitter at the plate. Let's not even dispute that. He could do a lot better, but still, great defensive catcher. And they got Yan Gomes, well-deserving. He's picked it up at the plate since about, I think, the end of May, something like that. Last month or so, he's been great hitter, good defender, also holding it down at the bottom end of the lineup for the Indians. Speaking of the Cleveland Indians, Michael Brantley made it in as an all-star reserve, and I don't like that at all. He's been the 17th most valuable outfielder in the American League. That's not good for an all-star, especially when you compare him to guys who were snubbed. We're talking about Eddie Rosario, the 5th most valuable outfielder in the American League. He didn't make it. He was a final vote candidate. Same thing with Giancarlo Stanton. Both guys deserve it. Aaron Hicks has been on fire since the middle of June. He's also a lot more valuable than Brantley in regards to overall offense and defense. He's got a much higher WAR. That's wins above replacement. Same thing for Nicholas Castellanos. I did a podcast with my friend over at shirtlesssports.com. Great website, by the way. You guys should definitely check it out. In that podcast, I talked about how Nicholas Castellanos he had that issue of small market versus big market. You know, everyone's talking about the Cleveland Indians. The Tigers are just that whatever team in the American League Central, a team that's trying to look to rebuild. No one's talking about them. And Castellanos is batting 300, slugging over 500 with no help around him. And again, no all-star selection. I think he was highly deserving over, Joe Jimenez in the bullpen. He's had a pretty decent season, but he's no Nicholas Castellanos. That was a huge snub, and I'm not a fan of that at all. Yeah, you know, same thing for George Springer. I think he's sprung up as a reserve based off of name value. He hasn't had a good season. He's slugging just a little bit over 400. He had a great start to the season, don't get me wrong, but this is a guy who most of his home runs have come in the first inning of ball games, and he kind of just disappears. He's come up in the clutch every now and then for the Astros, but other than that, he's been a little non-existent in that lineup. They've heated up as he's cooled down. That's not good, but again, he's been picked over Castellanos and Rosario and Stanton. All those guys, much more deserving, and you know, those guys are being picked out by American League managers and players and stuff like that. And I wonder, what do they see in Springer that they don't see in those other guys like the Hicks and the Castellanoses and the Stantons? I don't understand. I may never know, but him over those guys. Those guys were snubbed. I mean, come on now. But again, I do really love these American League reserves. I feel like this offense is so great. It is, wow, it's staggering. This offense is so great. Their reserves are probably better than the National League starting lineup. Francisco Lindor, 25 home runs, 291 batting average, and he scored 85 runs, and he's an American League reserve. Same thing for Gene Segura, over 20 stolen bases. He scored a ton of runs, hitting over 320, and he's also a reserve. Alex Bregman on fuego for the last couple of months. He's an American League reserve. This is a fantastic bench, and it's gonna be fun seeing him come up for a couple of at-bats and try to make a difference. Now, make no bones about it, the American League starting rotation is fantastic. Chris Sale's starting, 3rd season in a row, well-deserved. He's this generation's Randy Johnson, if not even better. Luis Severino, Trevor Bauer, Corey Kluber. He's not going to be pitching because he did start a few days ago. Same thing for Justin Verlander. He started yesterday, but if it's not Sale, if it's not Severino, probably he would have started for the American League. All these guys are well-deserving. But then again, there are the caveats again. Just like with first base when I was talking about earlier, J.A. Happ was selected as an all-star well before Blake Snell even fought his way into the rotation. I think Snell, by leaps and bounds, was way more deserving in comparison. And on top of that, maybe he should have started for the American League if it wasn't Chris Sale or if it wasn't Luis Severino. He's a snub. I think Marco Gonzalez is a snub. I think Charlie Morton is also a snub. You know, I forgot to mention that Garrett Cole was also picked. Jose Berrios was also picked. I think Berrios going to the All-Star game is just, it's a beautiful thing. He's had a great season. I love this kid. He's got a filthy slurve, curveball, whatever you want to call it. It's a nasty pitch. Such a joy to watch. But again, a lot of snubs this season. You know, I forgot a couple others. We're talking about Tyler Skaggs. Think about everything that Tyler Skaggs has gone through to get to where he is right now. He's got the highest K rate of his career. He's got an ERA under 3. And that AL West is not an easy division to pitch in. The American League in general is not an easy place to pitch in at all. But you look at what he's done, and he wasn't picked into the All-Star team. So I've come all this way, and to just make all these changes and to be so great. Again, that really sucks for him. Same thing for James Paxton. Paxton didn't get hurt. I think he might be landing on the DL, I believe. He was clocked in at throwing 93 on his fastball the other day before he was shut down after that one inning of work. But again, I think he also should have gotten an All-Star nod. He's been kind of like a Chris Sale light. You know, a lot of strikeouts, one of the league leaders in strikeouts, and we don't see him there in DC at all. That kind of sucks. Now I'm going to wrap up the American League and talk a little bit about the bullpen. This is a great batch. They got Aroldis Chapman, Craig Kimbrell, Edwin Diaz, Blake Trinan with that filthy, disgusting 96 to 97 mile per hour sinker. I was huge on him last season in Washington. I'm glad to see him in Washington as a member of the Oakland A's. Very well deserving. Filthy, disgusting closer no one really talks about. Joe Jimenez is also well deserving, although I do have my bearings about Nicholas Castellanos. Again, there are a lot of snubs here, and this is another area where this team is at fault because Colin McHugh's not here. He's not in DC for some reason at all. He's basically been Eric Gagne. You think about what the Astros bullpen has gone through. They had to demote Ken Giles. He's not even closing. McHugh's not even closing for them, and he has an ERA under 1, and he's just been probably the best reliever in all of baseball. And you talk about what he's done with that arsenal, filthy stuff, and just an excellent season for him. Jose Leclerc in Texas has been filthy. He's got a 13 K per 9. He's thrown a lot of innings for him. Again, no recognition. I wonder why, since Chu is there in DC, why isn't Jose Leclerc there as well? Alright, now we got the National League starting lineup. We're looking at Javier Baez kicking it off for him. He's at second base. Nolan Arenado at third base. Paul Goldschmidt, the DH, representing the Arizona Diamondbacks. Freddie Freeman, well-deserving first base for the Braves. Matt Kemp in left field. Welcome back to the All-Star game, Matt Kemp. Bryce Harper in the outfield. Nick Markakis in right field. Bryce Harper is going to be in center field on Tuesday night. Brendan Crawford at shortstop and Wilson Contreras at catcher, representing the Chicago Cubs. Now, this can't be an all-star roster review if I don't talk about the elephant in the room, but I'm gonna get there in a moment. I do want to say big shout out to Matt Kemp for reaching the All-Star game again. He's gone through a lot of gains to be where he's at right now, physically and mentally. He's lost a little bit of weight. Remember, he's a little big in San Diego, and he's cut down a few pounds. He slimmed down. He looks a lot more athletic, playing a lot better defense than he was in years prior. He looks a little bit more like the prime version of Matt Kemp than the guy that we were seeing in Atlanta and in San Diego. Even though that version of Matt Kemp isn't too bad, this is definitely an all-star outfielder. Big shout out also to Nick Markakis. I think for everything that he's done throughout his career, he's always been this great. How do I say it? I don't want to make the comparison. I'm not making the comparison, but he's always been kind of like a Tony Gwynn. He hits everything, hits lefties extremely well, has a feel for the entire field, and doesn't strike out a lot. You kind of have to really be on your A game to put him down on strikes. And he's hitting well over 300. He's among the league leaders in hits. I think he's leading the league in hits right now. Don't quote me on that, but definitely deserving. And he's saved that Atlanta Braves offense. He's kind of been a reason why that team has become so elite in regards to guys at the plate, guys at the dish. He's been a great add for him, and definitely big thumbs up to him. Now let's talk about that big elephant in the room, and of course it's Bryce Harper starting in center field for the Washington Nationals. And in a sense, I kind of get it. You know, he plays for the Nationals. That's where the All-Star game is at. It's in Washington, D.C. A lot of star-studded talent. You want the biggest name brand talent you can get out there. You do it in whatever way, shape, or form you can. And of course, this is a guy who was voted in by the fans. He's selling a lot of jerseys, he's selling a lot of merchandise, he's got his deals with all sorts of brands and stuff like that. And, you know, people pay to see Bryce Harper. You know, in DC, seats are being filled up because of him. And, I kind of get that part. But again, we're talking about a 210, 215, 220 hitter who's got the numbers. He's hitting a lot of home runs. He's driven a lot of runs, but he's driven a lot of guys. But still, you know, he's the 20th most valuable outfielder, I believe, in the National League. And, you know, he's right behind Scott Schebler. Should Scott Schebler be starting for the National League? You know, his numbers are better than Bryce Harper, so we can make that argument. in regards to overall value. I'm not just talking about hitting, I'm talking about overall offense and defense. He's been more valuable by wins above replacement in comparison. But there are a lot of outfielders who were snubbed in regards to letting Bryce Harper start, and there are a lot of outfielders who are reserved who should probably start over Bryce Harper, like, you know, for example, Lorenzo Cain, Christian Yelich in Milwaukee. Now, I could talk all day about, you know, how overvalued and how overrated Bryce Harper has been this season, because again, let's be real, let's be honest. I think the baseball purists are, you know, scratching their heads right now, like, how the hell is Bryce Harper even starting for this NL? How is he even in this roster at all? But again, I don't want to get too into that. You know, you can have your own argument about that sort of thing. There are a couple snubs I want to talk about, and I think these guys are highly deserving in comparison. Starling Marte from Pittsburgh, David Peralta from Arizona. David Peralta, he was shuttled into the cleanup spot for the Diamondbacks, and he's been fantastic in that role. You know, he's always had the power to be a cleanup hitter, and he's definitely delivered on that front. No recognition at all. Something about that market in Arizona just it doesn't get mainstream attention, and it's unfortunate because there's a lot of talent over there. And I remember, I think they had the same issue trying to get Jake Lamb into the All-Star game last season. Jake Lamb did have a great first half in 2017. David Peralta, same thing, but you know, he's got nothing to show for it. Starling Marte, same thing. Must be something about that market in Pittsburgh. This guy has 25 stolen bases. He's got a great slash line, hitting for average. He shows some power. He just went back-to-back home runs with Gregory Polanco this weekend. You know, that's something special. You want that kind of talent. You want guys who actually produce. You don't always want the name value. You want guys who are gonna show up and make a difference on the field and maybe get you a win in the ball game. But you know, again, we opted for Bryce Harper. We didn't opt for Peralta or Marte to even be reserves, and that's just, I mean, I can say come on now, but I'm running out of things to say. It's just really unfortunate. You know, I do have a couple other complaints about the National League lineup. I just want to get it out of the way. I don't think this is a very good roster, but I think another area where they messed up was by having Brandon Crawford start over Trevor Story. And again, I get it because this is mostly a vote-based situation. A lot of fans in San Francisco really rallied for Brandon Crawford to start, and I guess it wasn't the same issue with Trevor Story because Story wound up being a reserve. Although he has been a much better shortstop in comparison. Story has 20 home runs, 68 RBIs, he scored 50 runs, he's batting cleanup in that offense, and he's delivered time and time again for the Rockies. He's really been a saving grace for them this season in regards to other factors, and I'll get to that in a moment. But 12 stolen bases, 292 batting average, 577 slugging percentage. This is from a shortstop. He's looked more and more like Trevor Story has looked more and more like Troy Tulowitzki in his prime. And that's a beautiful thing for Colorado and that fan base. They should really, really enjoy what he's done for them. And I can't really say the same thing for Brandon Crawford. You know, in comparison to Story, he plays better defense, and that's kind of where it stops. That's kind of where the bus stops for him. You know, he only has, 10 home runs. He's hitting for average. He's got over 300 batting average, which is great for him. But he's not driving in a lot of runs. And, you know, he hasn't really facilitated the offense the same way that Story has. But again, he's starting for him. He's in the bottom of the lineup, and for good reason. You know, you kind of want to leave him down there. He gets the recognition for being in the lineup, but yeah, I'm not really feeling it with Crawford this season. I think he should have been a reserve. This also kind of upsets me, but you know who should also be starting for the National League this year? JT Realmuto. He has been by far the most valuable catcher in all of baseball, especially in the National League. Compare him to Wilson Contreras all you want, but he has far more RBIs, far more runs scored. He has 4 more home runs, and he's doing this all in 13 fewer games played and about 37 fewer plate appearances. And he's batting over 310. Contreras is batting around 270. Contreras' slugging is a little over 400. Realmuto slugging 536, and that's the highest clip for all catchers in the National League. He has about a 380 weighted on base average. That's incredible. That's 10th in the National League. That's higher than Joey Votto. When you have a weighted on base average over Joey Votto and you're catching, that's incredible. And he's playing great defense. This is an MVP type season he's having right now in Miami with that awful Marlins squad and that awful Marlins offense. He's still getting it done. He's only trailing Yasmani Grandal in RBIs, and he hasn't even played as many games as the rest of the league. That's incredible. He's a reserve. That's a slap in the face to JT Realmuto, in my opinion. I don't care what argument you can have about the voting system and all that. You know, people rallying behind Wilson Contreras in Chicago. Good for him. He had a great story. He got emotional and everything like that. First time he's starting as a catcher. JT Realmuto is my starting National League catcher without a doubt in my mind. I don't think there's an argument to have in that regard. That being said, I'm very, very happy to see guys like Scooter Gennett, Jesus Aguilar, Eugenio Suarez, all of these guys make the NL roster. These are guys who are having exceptional seasons. A couple of them are having MVP type seasons, like Aguilar, for example, leading that Brewers offense and just coming out of nowhere. A guy who was coming off the bench for them. He was kind of their Matt Stairs, their pinch hitter, and now he's getting it done, playing every day, cleaning out for the Brewers and putting up exceptional numbers. Among the best first basemen in all of baseball. I think if you go by a per at bat basis, he has been the best hitting first baseman in all of baseball, and that's including the Joey Vottos and the Freddie Freemans of the world. But again, Ozzie Albies as a reserve, that's insane. He's having a great season. Same thing with Scooter Gennett, Eugenio Suarez. He lost out to Nolan Arenado. That's understandable. Not many hitters in baseball. Not even talking third baseman. Not many players in baseball are better than Nolan Arenado. This is a great reserve list in general, if you ask me. And I think the National League, I think their biggest strength is in their reserves. It's going to be fun to see these guys come off the bench and do some damage. The National League starting rotation in their bullpen doesn't really hold a candle to what's going on in the American League, but I think they kind of nailed it on the head. I think they got all the right guys in that roster. We're talking about Max Scherzer, we're looking at Patrick Corbin, Jacob deGrom, Zach Greinke, Mike Foltynewicz, definitely deserving. That's his first All-Star game. He's made huge strides in his career to get to this point. Good for him. Big shout out to Mike Foltynewicz. Brad Hand in the bullpen, Kenley Jansen, Jason Jeffress, Josh Hader, all those guys are bullpen heads. All those guys are absolutely filthy, nasty stuff, and among the highest ranked relievers in all of baseball in regards to wins above replacement and overall performance. Good job. John Lester in the rotation, Miles Mikolas in the rotation, Aaron Nola, while Stripling was a late add. Felipe Vasquez is at the bottom end of that bullpen. This is an overall great I love the bullpen's fantastic. I think that's the part that sticks out in regards to pitching. I do wish that Adam Ottavino was here because he was just as nasty as Josh Hader was through April and May. And he's been overall filthy all season long. He has about a 13.5 K per 9. That's fantastic regardless of whether or not you're starting. But again, this rotation's pretty good. But I can see the American League holding it down in the National League kind of showing some chinks in the armor tomorrow night. The bottom line, pretty much, if I had to rank both of these rosters, I would say American League for me gets an 8 out of 10 overall, and that's mainly because that starting lineup is just too good. 1 through 6, we're talking about guys who are having Hall of Fame seasons. Like, imagine if Babe Ruth and Harmon Killebrew and Pete Rose and Tony Gwynn were all playing in the same roster at the same time. That's kind of what's going on in the American League at that top end of the lineup. That's that's despicable. That's unfair. It's just not. It's not gonna be fun. If you're a National League pitcher tomorrow night, kudos to you. Good luck. There are a few chinks. There are a few mistakes in regards to snubs, or a ton of snubs this season. In regards to rotation and a few spots in the bullpen, but mostly hitting wise, a lot of outfielders deserved it. That's also an argument with the National League, and it didn't happen. So this could have been an all-time great roster, but unfortunately, you know, managers gotta manage and fans gotta be fans, and some guys were left out and they didn't deserve to be left out. As for the National League roster, it's merely okay. It's not that great. I give it a 6 out of 10. There's not really a lot going on in regards to the lineup. The lineup is pretty good. A lot of those guys are deserving, especially the guys who are in there for the first time, like Ozzie Albies, Scooter Gennett, Jesus Aguilar, Nick Markakis, who's starting. Those guys highly deserved, but again, they're not playing. Those guys, as well as they're playing, they're not playing at the same caliber as the guys playing in the American League, especially when we're talking about that top end of the American League lineup. I can go on all day about that. It's not really the same thing that's going on in the National League. These are great hitters, but they're not exceptional, once-in-a-lifetime outputs that we're getting from them. And that's kind of the problem. Another thing, there were so many omissions this year in the National League. It's baffling. It's also kind of baffling with the American League. Like, you know, I talked about Blake Snell. But for every Blake Snell in the National League, there's an Adam Ottavino, there's a mismatch in the lineup. Brendan Crawford starting over Trevor Story, a plethora of outfielders being left out. But Bryce Harper batting .214 is starting in the All-Star game. for example, and that's just unfortunate. It's not right, you know. As a fan of baseball, I find myself to be a huge fan of baseball, and I watch a lot of these guys who are performing. They're killing it day in and day out, and they're sitting at home watching the game. They don't deserve that. They gotta be in DC, and they're not. I think it was poor rostering, poor management in behalf of the managers who came together, the fans who voted. It's unfortunate. Again, I think they did a good job with the starting rotation. I think they did a good job with the bullpen. But this isn't a team that I think is going to win tomorrow. I don't think they stand a chance. Alright, so that pretty much does it. I got to start getting ready for work and missing out on a home run derby tonight, unfortunately. But I'm really happy that I was able to sit here today and jot this out for you guys. I really wanted to talk passionately about the All-Star Game and the rosters. I feel like I did. I want to dump out some more All-Star Game coverage later on, so stay tuned for that. If you like the video, give it a thumbs up and maybe even subscribe. I got more baseball stuff coming up. I do my deep dives and stuff like that. I think you guys would really enjoy it, especially the baseball purists. Again, this is J-Mud signing off. Hope you guys have a wonderful day. God bless.